Hey YouTube, it's Beck here from Sewbecurated. I am here to talk about a new project that I am starting. It's a slow stitch project and it is a quilter's slow stitch workbook. So if you're coming from a quilting background, you will know that you have to lay out your blocks sometimes, and sometimes you'll have laid them out and then you'll need to stop work or move, or you might be able to sit and stitch and then you have to go home and you haven't finished your project and you want your block to stay as you've planned the fabrics to be, but it's not, you're not there yet, it's not stitched together. So this is a workbook to keep blocks together as we move around or move about. And as with all slow stitch projects, they've been around. This idea has probably been around for hundreds of years. I'm amused that some people feel that they are the original creators of things in recent times, because stitch-alongs and projects like this have been around for so long. And I know there's some, I don't actually know, I suspect there's some patterns out there for kind of this kind of thing, but mine is a slow stitch kind of model. And I'll turn you around in a second, I'll show you what I mean by that. But, and you can also buy from some suppliers. I know Jen Kingwell, who's a beautiful Australian quilt designer, and she owns Amity Textiles. She has like a sheet that you can roll up and keep your block together. So there's pre-made products out there. I suspect there's probably patterns for something like this, but this is more like how I do a needlebook, informed by the textiles that I'm using. And there's a couple of things that are a little bit perhaps different about mine, but by no means am I an original creator of this. And I also just want to acknowledge at this point that there's a beautiful woman, Sue, who comes to Tuesday Sit and Stitch, and she is making one at the moment, and I could not stop thinking about it, and I tried to convince her to do some sort of video or something. She was not interested in that. So here I am doing a video, and I'm going to show you what I'm working with to make my slow stitch quilter's workbook. And I've been kitting up with Emma today some kits and I'll show you what I mean by that in case you want to stitch along with me, and I'm going to share how I do it on YouTube. Okay. So this is a piece of very threadbare, very thin vintage quilt that I've had for a while and been looking for a project to do. And I think I probably prefer this. The spot for some reason really speaks to me, this side. So this is going to be the exterior of my workbook. And mine is about 13 inches square, or so 13 inches by 13 inches, or when opened out, 13 by 26. So that's the exterior piece. I will absolutely be embellishing this. It will not just sit like this. There will be items added to it. And then I'm going to have 3 leaves that open up within. And they are going to be made out of this beautiful woolen blanket that I have, or woolen blankets. So on the inside of them, you'll have this big expanse that you can lay out your quilt pieces. And then and they will be joined to my workbook down here. Each one will have to be seamed in separately. So they're not going to be like pages of a book like this. Each one will be seamed like so. And I'm going to have 3 that I can lay out quilts in, or quilt blocks in. So they will all go inside, and they need to be trimmed down. They're slightly too big at the moment. I like to kind of work with a bigger space and then trim down or edge as I work through things. But so this is effectively what my book will be. Each of the blanket pieces will be seamed in separately Inside will be a plain blanket piece, maybe with some edging on it, to lay out quilt blocks, but the exterior of each leaf allows me lots of opportunity to do some beautiful slow stitching, as does the interior of my quilt piece that is the exterior of my book. Now, in addition to that, so then, you know, you've laid out your quilt blocks, you've had to stop working and put it away because you've got a naughty puppy called Ziggy Bagel, or just for some other reason perhaps, and you don't want your blocks to fall out. Now, the wool will mostly hold them still, but in addition, so this is the back cover, and these are not the pieces that I'm going to be using to do it. I am going to attach 3 pieces, and I'm not sure if these are the pieces that I will use. I do think, sorry, I should put this one this way. I do think I will use this tapestry. So I'm going to attach those to the exterior of that back panel so that when my book is closed up and my pages are there and I don't want them to move, these will fold in like so and just sit in, and then this will close, and then you can just, so I may even have a tie to tie it together, but it's kind of like a big needle book really in lots of ways. I like to do practical projects, and this for a quilter will be really practical. So nothing can fall out because these things are flapped over, and that part of it was thought of by Sue, which I think is extremely clever. And that's what we're dealing with. So this is the base. These 3 pieces of blanket and this quilt are the base of what I'm going to be working with mine. I've also gathered together lots and lots of favourite bits and pieces. So I'll just work through them slowly so you can see what I work with when I'm doing a project like this. It's worth pointing out as well, this is something that I do coming from a quilting background, because when you're making a quilt, you want to see what fabrics you are creating with. So you will make what we call a quilt pool. And I tend to do that for a slow stitch project as well. So when we kit things up, that's like a pool of fabrics and vintage textiles that we think would be lovely to use together. And this is what I've done here. So I have some gathered quilt blocks. Look at this beautiful, like that blue is just divine. This one's machine stitched, but on the center, and then hand stitched in the edge. So maybe by 2 makers over time, I'm not sure. Lovely piece of rose cross stitch from a tablecloth, but it's really not showing up on here, but it's run, the green has run. So the tablecloth was divine, so I'm going to want to trim that in quite close when I use this piece. Another tiny little quilt block. These are, I think, less than 1 inch when they're finished. Lovely strawberry cross stitch, probably a placemat. Beautiful old piece of, I imagine, curtaining. Just stunning. I picked this up from Sue Garrett, who is the Vintage Linen Press. She does a sale every 2 weeks or so on Instagram, and she's also the designer of the Gosling quilt, which I wrote the pattern for and has been really popular. So Sue and I became friends through our love of vintage textiles. I've been collecting some tapestries for a while. I'm not sure why or what I'm going to do with them, but I do really like this one. And I think this might be a nice page to like kind of trap bits and pieces from falling out of my book, as I said before. So that's a lovely kind of maybe a Swiss Alp. It kind of makes me think Heidi. This tiny, came in a bundle I bought from England. Like little donkey, it's a pocket, a child's pocket, and it's come off, and I thought, you know, that needs to be loved again. Little yo-yo, just in a very pleasing to me pink. Have some more yo-yo pieces. So some flower bits, I'm right down to the end of, I had a few left over myself, but that's the end of them. And then these ones, I actually really love the back of the pink, and they are useful yo-yos to add some kind of rounded corners into your work so it doesn't look too kind of blocky. Bigger pink yo-yos. Pink, I love pink. Everybody knows I love green, but I also love pink. Beautiful blue, probably a napkin, maybe a hanky. It's got some gorgeous little flowers on the edge there. Excuse my nails. Look at that little strawberry. This was up on my inspiration board, and it may or may not, all of these things, they're the pile I've gathered. They may not all make it in, and I may add to it as well. The reason why this may not go in is because this would actually be a beautiful border of a page of a needle book. But it could also be really good to back a corner of that bluey blanket that I have. Lovely green linen with some beautiful fine embroidery. This is a doily that came, still got its price tag on it, $3. It came from, I was gifted a half-finished quilt that I'm going to reimagine into a finished quilt. And when I was looking at the quilt that was gifted to me, I said, oh, isn't this fabric beautiful? It's a little hexy quilt. And then there was some extra fabrics with it. And here's the doily that the lady had bought and cut up to make some hexies out of, and it was just next to that, and I think they are just gorgeous together, and I will include those into hopefully this project, but certainly some project. Lovely little piece of vintage fabric. Doily that I've used part of in a previous project. I think it's in my slow stitch quilt actually. I really love when there's crosses on things, but the colours, the vintage colours are quite lovely. Two little blocks that I made for a quilt. It was actually a quilt that played with fabric volume and it made diamonds, but I wouldn't have had these two blocks next to each other. It was made for Otto when he was little, and I think at the time what I did is just made a lot of blocks and then played around with them until I was happy. So these were two that were left over. Actually, I have a box of old quilt blocks now, and I think that, you know, maybe one day in the future somebody is going to find those and feel the joy that I have when I find old quilt blocks. This beautiful green tray cloth, I guess, and it's got lovely, lovely edging on it, beautiful embroidery. I love the simplicity of the colours, drawn thread work, just stunning. So that might go into it. Now this is a really special piece. Very fine cotton here. That's the front, but look at the back. Like, just exquisite work. And I thought one of these, I think they're hydrangeas, coming up on my quilt cover might be really lovely. I paid a lot for this. I think maybe $40, I'm not sure. I've never seen anything quite like it. It is just stunning work. I really love the edge of it too. It will make it into a number of projects that I work on. Just a very simple tray cloth with brown stitching, which I really like. I got this in Melbourne just after my mother had died actually, so it's kind of a bit of a sentimental one. I keep trying to put it into projects and keep not being able to cut it, which, you know, it's stained, it's got broken bits in places, so I'm not really sure why I can't finish it or cut it. I think it's tied up with those memories of Mum. I'll show you the fabric at the end. This is also a block that I made. Blair, who's Wisecraft on Instagram, I think she may still do them, but she did a couple of years ago a chicken scratch quilt. This was one of the blocks. I actually really hated this at the time. I love doing the quilt. I love learning the techniques. I've used some of the blocks in other projects, but not in the quilt. Like when I'd made all the blocks, I didn't actually want to make the quilt from it. And this one wasn't my favorite, but I actually think it's quite lovely having stepped away from it for a while, and I may include this somehow. Simple embroidery, 6-stranded embroidery, just really pretty. Piece of cross stitch because the green is just perfection to me, and also I love a cross. Some black birds and very cute stitching as well. I've never seen the black birds before, and one of the kits that we've put together also has the other half of this. What else have I got? It's almost a cross stitch, except that the crosses haven't been completed, so it's one way of the cross stitch. I'm not sure what you call that, but that will be lovely. This is a piece that I have made in the past and not finished. I was going to frame it up, but I was thinking it might be lovely in some way, shape or form. It's really simple stitching with lovely lace bits that have caught my eye, and I think that might be a corner of a hanky. Oh. This gorgeous piece of tablecloth. This was a partly finished tablecloth, and I'm just going to include, I hope, maybe on the back of one of them, that whole bit, because I just love it. The colours, the blues that they've used through here, like tealy blues, just stunning. Another couple of beautiful quilt blocks. It's fabrics. So this has been a recent fabric. I think maybe a couple of years ago when I had a shop, it was redone by Laurie Holt for Riley Blake Fabrics, but this is the original fabric, and it's a machine stitched block. And then this is a hand stitched block because they've used yellow thread. Isn't that funny? Just really pretty. Beautiful fabrics. Little bit of applique pieces. I really love that hot pink that's still in a very old piece. Another tiny little bit of applique. And then one more quilt block. This one has to go in because of the dog. I think that looks like Ziggy Bagel. If you've been following my Instagram, we got a new puppy a week ago. He's naughty and he is causing lots of drama. But it's just adorably cute, which is lucky. So some lovely fabrics in here, but I would definitely put something onto that. I just do like that at this time we are dealing with a new puppy, and this is a project that I'm working on at the moment. I always like that sentimentality when I'm making something. Okay. So I also have some little bits of fabric. This will have been an old curtain. There's a seam up the top. I'm just gonna maybe, oops, wrong way. Take you in a bit closer so you can see. Lovely little piece of fabric. Some beautiful old feed sack fabric with the green and the grey and the brown and the pink are just really pleasing. A little pop of lime in there. Really old fabric as well, and a beautiful French green fabric that I have. Vintage green, cotton, lovely floral, pink ticking, a little bit of pink, vintage fabric. This one's, not sure where that came from, but it's just really adorable. And this lovely piece as well. So, one more last thing. A little bit of this beautiful fabric as well, which I think I've probably used it in my Gosling quilt. I think that's what that was for. I will probably fussy cut around that and do some embellishment on the exterior of my pages. So I'm kind of going to do textile collaging on the edges of the backs of those pages. I also do have a little bit of lace that was just sitting on my work table actually, and I've put that in there because they are always beautiful to include in textile collage. And this one, it's got some beautiful rust stains on it, just such beautiful work. So that all of these, let's take you back out, sorry, are the embellishments for the book that I'm planning. So that's a lot. All of those bits, parts of all of those bits may make it in. They may not, but that is what I would say is my fabric pool for this project. I hope I've done an okay job of explaining how that's going to go together. Hold on 2 secs. And I'm hoping if you are a quilter that you might like to make one of these books with me. It's, you know, a practical and useful way to use some of the beautiful vintage bits that you may have. I like to use quilting cottons. I'm quite sparing in vintage fabrics in quilts because sometimes they can be quite worn. But in a project like this that is not going to be dragged around by kids or perhaps a puppy, you can use all those beautiful treasured bits. Now, in front of me here, I have one of the kits. How many kits have we done? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Six kind of kits. They're all different, but they have some elements that are the same, and you'll notice them from my quilt book as well. So little bits of the same fabrics that have come from my personal stash and feed sacks, and just gorgeous things that I'm working with, similar size pieces. In fact, some of them are a bit bigger than mine actually. But for using a little bit of lovely applique. Each kit is different, obviously. Well, they've all got the same fabrics, but each kit is different because the quilt block's different. Here's this beautiful one. Lovely quilt block. Some yo-yos. This one has some beautiful green linen flowers. Like, look at that. Just stunning. Very fine crochet doily. Pretty doily and leaves. Some of that lovely curtain. And some of this lovely piece of fabric as well. Like, this is stunning, that fabric. In addition to those things, this one has this quilt, which is really lovely. Very worn like mine, beautiful. Like, you can feel all that connection with past in it, or I can. And then 2 lovely pieces. I'm using 3 pieces. We just didn't have any more of that lovely green and purple blanket, but 2 of the blankets that I am using as leaves for inside the book. So this is what I would call a pretty good, pretty comprehensive starter kit for a slow stitch quilter's workbook. I've got some beautiful fabrics, some beautiful embroidered pieces. They've been curated by myself so that they coordinate. They are very similar to the pieces that I am working with. In fact, the fabrics are pretty much the same. And I've put those together in case, 1, you don't have any of your own at home, but 2, you want to make something similar to mine. So I'm really hoping you're going to follow along in what I'm doing here and make your own quilter's slow stitch workbook. So happy stitching, everybody. I'll see you back soon because I'm not going to be able to stay away from making. Hope you have a wonderful weekend. Oh, and the kits will probably be online by the time that this goes live.